Are you waiting on me or am I waiting on you?
No, you go ahead, Doug.
So, all right. So everybody, welcome tonight. For everybody watching, we got some really cool guests on the show tonight. I got too many things bothering me. Hold on. I'm sorry. I'm unprepared. We're going to talk with CopLine's tonight. And Stephanie, how do you say your last name? I apologize. I don't screw it up. One more time.
Samuels.
And James Alvarez, Jim Alvarez. I'm bad with names, so I always ask just so I don't.
Okay.
And super honored to have them on the show tonight to talk about CopLine and everything they do. This is a very important subject for me. That's why I'm so glad to have them on there, or have them on the show, as well as all the other guys. As well, we got a few guys that might chime in later on the panel from the team. But let me just start by saying why it is so important for us to have this type of company to reach out to, and for several reasons. Obviously, it's a life-saving tool. Without it, we are in big, big trouble. I mean, we have to have it, and we have to support organizations like this because, and this one being our favorite, that's why we're all, the panel is so glad to have them on here. But it is so imperative to have them on and have the people to support these type of organizations so that they can have the volunteers that, and we'll talk about this in the show, the volunteers that get on the phone to speak with first responders that call in. And I'll tell you, I'm going to go there. I'm going to be as professional as I can with this. But the reason that is so important to me is that when I went through my suicide, my department, and at the time, being in Central Florida, we weren't aware of this stuff. And we're talking 5-6 years ago. So Raul being a neighbor of mine, Raul being on the Orlando side, me being on the coast side, Raul, do you remember anybody? Do you remember any of this type of stuff a few years ago?
No, sir.
And so once I had my incident, and then once Raul and his team had the pole shooting, it became a little bit more knowledgeable in this area. And the quality of the organization is important to me. And I'll tell you why, because when we didn't have the information, we just got a random company that was out of the Northwest, totally on the other side of the U.S. from us. And unbeknownst to us, we just called a number because we thought that was to do. And then the next thing you know, so I am a drug agent who took a gun, put it to his head, and pulled the trigger. Once I got help, I needed to go somewhere. Once I was stabilized and healthy enough, we had to go somewhere. Well, we didn't have the proper phone and the proper company to deal with. And what took place was this particular company, and they're out there. Unfortunately, there are organizations, even run by law enforcement entities like this one, that are more concerned about the dollar bill. And that's unfortunate in this industry. And I found myself in a drug treatment center in a strip mall in South Florida with 30 heroin addicts. Not a cop, not a trauma facility. I spent 30 days in there because I gave my word to my boss. Oh, we got a big man on the screen today. Thanks, Dr. Dara. Everybody's glad to see you.
Hey guys, sorry for being late.
That's okay. We knew you got important stuff going on. Are you in your office, or did your wife kick you back into your daughter's room?
Yeah, I'm in the playroom.
In the playroom. I know. I just figured on it.
But this is my office. It's been my office for the last 4 months.
Are you at the house?
Yeah, I am. And I'm at a card table and my dining room chair. That's been my office for 4 months.
I was going to dog him out last week, but I let him slide.
Hey, it's all I need, man. I don't need fancy stuff.
Well, I got kicked out to the kitchen area, so don't feel bad. So, anyway, I was saying, and I ended up in the drug treatment center with 30 heroin addicts. No cops, no trauma base, no aftercare, no anything. I spent every day in Narcotics Anonymous NA, right? And AA meetings. And then on the 30th day, they kicked me out the door. And basically, I ended up becoming friends with the owner of the facility, and we became buddies. And he ended up telling me he paid $5,000 to have me come to his facility. So he taught me because he knew he was going to be able to charge my insurance, and they were drug testing me 3 times a day. Never left the home, but they were drug testing the only guy in there that didn't do drugs 3 times a day because they were billing it. And that's what I learned right out the gate with this type of stuff.
We lost the audio on our end.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
I can hear everybody. Can you hear us, Jim?
Yep, you're back.
Okay. So anyway, with that short story, and you know, if it's that important to you, you can call me on a personal note. I'll tell you the company. I'm not going to be, you know, they don't deserve the accreditation on our show, nor do I want to be unprofessional. Even though I'm retired, I still have moments where I try to be professional. But anyway, it's so important to have the absolute best possible care out there, because if you've ever gone on our website for Survive First, you'll see the slogan on there that says, a first responder's life cannot be compromised.
Correct.
Bottom line. When somebody is in dire need, and I don't think some people realize how radical first responders are. And I tell people all the time, like, obviously, you know, we're good friends. Y'all know me well, and I'm known to be a crazy wild man. But man, people don't realize when you do this, something's not right. And you can't mess around with that. You can't jeopardize, you can't compromise somebody's life. It cannot be about a dollar sign. So that's my 2 cents on this whole thing. That's why I'm super excited to have these guys on here and get this message out here of why it is so important to reach out to the appropriate thing. And it's also really important for agencies, departments, and other organizations to endorse the proper company. Endorse it without a dollar sign connected to it. So once again, thank you, Stephanie and Jim, for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Honored to have you on here, and I'm just going to sit and listen. And obviously, we always, you know, we bring Dr. Dar on. If Dar is not on, we have Denise Coyle, who's another fantastic clinician. We always have them on the show just in case somebody calls and needs help. And twice this week, we've had somebody reach out to this organization and ask for help. So obviously, we're getting there and we're getting that message out. So
awesome, Doug.
And look, Chris, man, my shirt it's loose, man. I got room in here. This is my polite version of Blackwater today.
Hey, I just want to give a quick shout out, and then I really want to get into CopLine. I'm wearing my, turn this way, Norfolk Police Sully Strong. He was a SWAT officer, got diagnosed with MS, and we were just trying to help support him by buying the T-shirts and fixing his house up to make it more accessible for him as his health declines. So big shout out. And the other thing I want to point out, especially with all the stuff we do on the show, we don't ever bring on anybody that would be detrimental to first responders or veterans. Like Doug was talking about, there's just so many, I think the clinical term, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Dara, is fucking pieces of shit organizations that like to just look at first responders and vets as a dollar symbol. And to them, the message from me personally is go fuck yourself. You're a piece of shit. Having said that, I want to
clinical version, right? Clinical.
What?
Yeah, that's
the clinical version, right?
That's the clinical version. I had to look that up.
The wise words of Joe Pesci.
Yeah, it bothers me so much that these organizations are making a killing and they're ruining lives. And they're ruining the lives not just of the first responder or the veteran, but of their family, of their friends. So that's why we take the show to highlight some of the best, the most qualified, the most significant, and the most impactful organizations to reach out and get help. Because my biggest fear is that I would send somebody to a place that did more harm than good. So with that, I'm super, Stephanie and Jim, so happy to have you on. And I know I speak for everybody else that, appreciate you taking the time to come up and promote it on our little web show here. So without any further ado, I know we did a resources webinar, and we realized that there's a lot of resources out there that we wanted to give a special time, instead of just talking a little bit about CopLine, but just a lot and in-depth look at what you guys do and what services you provide. So that when the people do, a lot of people don't know who to call. And so if you're providing them somebody or significant, like a number, so to speak, it's that much beneficial for somebody who may not reach out in person, but may want to call. So with that, please tell us what you do and how you got started and all that good stuff.
So I'm actually going to share, because what you don't know about me, or what you don't know about CopLine, is that the Pulse shooting actually is part of how this ended up national. So CopLine has been around for 15 years. CopLine was pay forward. I am a police psychotherapist, been working with cops and a sprinkle of other first responders, but for the better part of 30 years. So certainly knew that I did a lot of ride-alongs. So I knew that cops really talked to cops, so that's who they trusted. So ended up writing legislation, ended up getting a system in place that ended up not being able to stay true to a mission of being able to be confidential, active listening, other key components that for me were going to make or break any type of hotline. So I founded CopLine, and CopLine would ring into my office. So didn't advertise, didn't do anything. Always knew what the integrity was going to be. So speed ahead to Pulse shooting. It's 2016. So it was ringing into my office. And after the Pulse shooting, I realized that I had to do something. So it was ringing into the office line, called up phone company and said, you need to transfer these lines off of there, get it onto my cell phone. So of which point in time then I can answer 24/7, not anticipating a whole lot of calls. So until we can train anybody, speed ahead 3 weeks, which you're gonna know, is the Dallas shooting. So the Dallas 5 then were shot inside of 3 weeks of the Pulse shooting. So at that point, I got a call. CopLine was still in, who I took it when I was in session, and it was a woman who was hysterical, crying, screaming, you've got to help. You've got to do something. They're killing my brothers and sisters. You've got to do something. And a few things rattled me. That rattled me. You know, and part of me, you know, and I felt helpless as the rest of the world. And then I realized that there was something that I could do. And so made damn sure that those lines got off of my off of the office, started answering those lines. Again, they were not ringing, made a decision. You know, I was going to do it right, not fast. Because so often, truly, the road of good intentions is just, or the road to hell is paved by good intentions. People just throw shit up and then it's gone. I wasn't going to do that. This was way too important. So took a while. Ended up being able to get the first training out in San Diego in April of 2017. And then from that day on was able to transition so that only retired police officers were going to be answering the lines for CopLine. The other thing is that we don't take any federal money. You know, when you're talking about the integrity and you're talking about just kind of following the money trail. So, and I will be opinionated on this. If you listen to the buzzwords now on resiliency and the money that is being thrown towards resiliency, I know of no greater populations than first responders that are fucking resilient. So I have no idea what this is except a whole bunch of people that are just grabbing millions of dollars and saying, hey, we need resiliency training. Anyway, that's my tangent on that. So we don't take any federal or state money. It truly ensures both integrity, which is primary, and confidentiality, both obviously go together. So it has made it a little more difficult, but I'll tell you, Jim, myself, anybody that chooses to be part of CopLine can look any cop in the eye and say, you will not have to worry about anybody finding out that you call. We don't care about the person's name. We don't care about phone numbers. We don't care about departments. None of that stuff. What's important is you've got a safe place you can call, You can talk about anything you need to, and you don't have to worry about being traced, about somebody coming. And that was, that has come up is, how do you deal with somebody who is, suicidal? And the answer is they're ambivalent. They've called the lines. You need to be able to have a place where you can talk about suicidal ideations, thoughts, and even an intent. Because if you're sharing that, you're talking to somebody that is connecting with you. So being able to connect on those levels and not having to worry about keeping them on the line long enough so that you can send rescue. Who the hell shows up when a hotline pings a phone call or traces? The cops. So you know what ends up happening? Cop shows up, allegedly saves your life. Not so sure that you were going to blow your brains out, but allegedly saves your life according to the person that's now traced the call. And the person that now showed up at your door, you know what they do when they go back to their department? Don't ever fucking call that line again. It's not confidential. So the good of the one could never outweigh the good of the many. But when you look at that suicide hotlines, and again, CopLine's not a suicide line. We deal with all different psychosocial stressors. Anything from rookie getting on the streets, and Jim will address this, and just kind of not prepared for some of what's going on, particularly with the climate change now, to a seasoned officer who's just seen too much and is contemplating killing himself or herself. So being able to express this without fear, because what we know is those that call hotlines don't typically die by suicide. So with the Los Angeles Suicide Prevention Center, oldest hotline in the United States, we've had over 7,500,000 calls since 1963, of which 2 people have died by suicide on those lines. So statistically speaking, certainly not relevant, but really becomes, to us, it's not only the gold standard, it's a platinum standard of how to run a hotline. And more importantly, when you're looking at cops, an added layer of security, because they're just not calling. I mean, the key isn't, I never worry about, Doug, probably you either. I don't worry about the people that are in sessions with me. I worry about those that aren't in session with me. I don't worry as much about the people that are calling the hotlines. I'm worried about those that aren't. So the key is, if we can get the word out and we can get those to call in, we know once they call in, we got them. You're safe. Whatever we need to do, they'll never be alone. So
let me just add, when that guy or girl calls the hotline, right?
Mhm.
Even if something as tragic as him leaving the hotline and committing, he or she, I say he because I'm thinking myself, leaves the hotline, right? Least the last person he spoke to was in his family, and let him know, or her, on the way out, hey, we all love you. We're sorry this happened to you. How cool is that, right? It's the key of getting them to call.
There's such an important factor, because that's come up in training, is how do you deal with it if the person does die by suicide? And that's exactly what I talk about, is I talk about, they called you for a reason. They called because they wanted to speak to a brother or sister. And that even if, and as painful as this is, even if it's that they wanted you to be there with them because they loved you, that you might end up bearing witness to those last moments. And those that don't die by suicide, those that when you look at, they're dying of cancer or what have you, how many times have you heard that they've waited for everybody to get to the room, and then all of a sudden, they take their last breath after, Uncle Tommy came in from, Philadelphia. I feel it's similar. I feel it's similar.
It's just basically a ministry of presence, just being there for somebody without the fear of intervening. Because a lot of people just don't want you to help them. I think they're trying to seek comfort in just this sea of despair and just whatever is going through. I have a question about the folks that are picking up the phone. I know in working with people in crisis for a very long time, it can be emotionally draining and can be impactful. And sometimes you get that vet or that first responder that you talk to, and it's like you're talking to yourself 8-10 years ago. What do you guys? How do you guys take care of the folks answering the phone?
Well, first of all, the heart of a cop is that to serve and protect. So the heart of our retired cops across the nation, they still want to give back to the blue suiters, our deputies, our highway patrol, every police officer out there that's still suiting up every day, going out there, serving their communities and keeping us safe. So we're blessed to have our retired cops, because without them, CopLine would not exist. So they fully commit themselves. They're in retirement mode, and they see our flyer somewhere at a conference or on a website, social media, or what have it. And they realize, you know what, I still have something to give back to my brother and sister officers. But like you just keyed on, during training, they may be exposed to a trigger themselves. And Stephanie here and our lead instructor, who's a police psychologist from the LAPD, and we have a robust training cadre, they're on it, because once the phone call is over with, that call that you're talking about may put them back into that critical incident that they were involved in 10, 15, 20 years ago. My partner here to my right is right on the phone, making sure that we are straight and we're right, and do we need anything? So we have our self-care built in to the 40-hour block of training. So it's a great way to make sure we take care of our folks.
And beyond that, so Jim also answers the lines, so that Jim had taken a call some time ago, and I was able to see, because we get basics. There's nothing that we get, but when it's a stressful call, I'll send him a text and I'll be like, hey, really good call. Was wondering if you wanted to debrief afterwards. So it's not just for those 40 hours they're monitored. They are literally monitored throughout their entire existence on CopLine. And part of the vetting process, it's a pretty significant and in-depth questionnaire that has to be filled out. And a lot of the volunteers are kind of taken aback because it's invasive. And part of it is because I want to know what critical incidents they've been exposed to, because I need to know what their triggers potentially are going to be. And it's just the initial phases of vetting, because I will talk to people about kind of what they've experienced and how they handled it. So if an officer says, they're involved in a critical incident, but they never sought treatment, that they didn't need it, that's a flag for me. It's a flag, because you're going to be answering lines where, how are you going to be real? This isn't about sharing information. This isn't about, oh, you went through that. Well, here's what I went through. It's about, that active listening skills. But, cops on the other line can smell bullshit from a million miles away. So when they say, how did you, had you ever been involved in, in critical incidents? Guys will always say yes. And they'll say, well, how did you handle it? Well, if you're absolutely anti-therapy, how the hell are we giving a referral? So all those different things are looked at and processed out in the initial vetting. And the initial vetting is truthfully just the tip of an iceberg for us at CopLine. But it's a long, involved questionnaire that can absolutely be perceived. And we actually, that's our first way of what we call self-elimination, is people saying, screw this, I'm not filling it out, it's nobody's business. Not going to be good on a line. That's great.
So for how, if somebody wanted to participate or become a volunteer, how would they do that?
Okay, so for that, they just go straight to our webpage. In the upper right-hand corner, it has a link for a volunteer, and then you click on the questionnaire. The questionnaire goes straight to Stephanie. She reviews it. She immediately calls the retired cop back. They do a phone interview back and forth, and she gets her feel with the mental health expertise that she carries. And then if they're going to be selected with some of the criteria we have, then we look at putting them through that 40-hour block of training, which we try and do 2 to 3 times a year. Yeah.
And actually, we don't even look at putting them through. They then have to put themselves through. And this is really this amazing commitment because, we're doing something that's unprecedented. We are running a actually international hotline, and we don't have any centralized base. So depending on where most of our listeners are going to be coming from is where we typically call the training. So we've been in Texas quite a bit, in California, particularly because our lead trainers here. But we've had people flying in from all over the United States and Canada to do the training completely at their expense. And that's the difficult part, is not everybody makes it. And it's just brutal to have to tell somebody that has truly gone to significant expense that they just aren't able to answer those lines. But it's imperative, that's done.
And on the training component, we've all been to our share of schools, whether it's PD or FD, and some are obviously a waste of time. But after I retired from the LAPD, I saw the flyer. I went to the training, and the training is pretty in-depth. And they cover the gamut of everything that an active listener, a retired cop, who has to switch that hat now because we solve people's problems. That's what we do. Now you have to listen and work together to try and bring to the surface some coping skills, some tools of the trade, whatever that caller may have not thought about, hopes that they're able to utilize it to try and help themselves out. Because we know that they took a lot of courage to make that phone call. We want to capitalize on that courage to try and help our brothers and sisters out that are out there and get them the help up to referrals to mental health professionals if we have to.
Yeah.
For the folks that can't really do it for whatever reason, whether it's too in depth or like Doug's not really good with paperwork because he's just learned to read a little bit. He's at a 5th grade level, I think now. Congratulations on making that. Sixth. I apologize.
On the application for law enforcement, it says 6th grade education.
What about the folks that want to just support CopLine? What are some of the things that they can do?
Starting with being able to get the word out. We always encourage people to vet the lines. Don't take my word for it. Don't take Jim's. Call.
Just like Doug vetted us, and you vetted us, looking at the website, talking to us. We weren't full of bullshit, and it's the right deal. It's a nonprofit. No one's making a dime. We're given to the blue suiters. We're given to our brothers and sisters out there to make sure this line is hot and it's open, that we can take the call.
So things helping social media seems to be it. Being able to go back to their old departments, being able to say, hey, there's this service. We need to, I don't care how robust the psych services is in a department, it's just another layer. Being able to say, hey, there's this anonymous, hotline that you can call in the middle of the night when you're done with a shift, when the baby's crying, your wife left and you're overwhelmed. There is this place that you can land no matter what's going on. So that's huge. Fundraisers are always huge. Being able to participate in whatever it takes to just be able to help make sure that these lines exist in perpetuity, that the mission does not waver, and that the word is out there. That's key. And we are looking at, in the near future, going to a texting where you can actually text your brother or sister on the other line, which is great. That's the new millennium. So we're looking at our volunteers and we're like, who here is under whatever age? Who gets this? And it's so funny when you send out the email saying, anybody interested in texting, the blitz of nastiness you actually get back from some of the guys that are hilarious. And the younger guys are like, great idea, man. Great idea. Sign me up.
Well, I know it's sad, but I've been around the country looking at all these different peer support programs. And to be quite honest, in many cases, departments as a CopLine, you may be the only thing that's actively working in that agency. So I don't think people realize how horrible support is for law enforcement or for public safety. Now, let me ask you this. Because a lot of times we try to do things in tandem with our fire department. What happens if you get a phone call and it's a firefighter on the other end?
Absolutely, we're taking care of them.
Yeah.
Absolutely, we're taking care of them. You
Read
get a
that
dispatch,
question
we're
first.
taking care of them.
Mhm.
Under no circumstances. I was, I was looking at a call from a non-Leo today, and our call taker was taking care of him. That was you. and our call taker was taking care of him too. I mean, it's just, that's what you do. I mean, so
there was a quick question, and I think you were in the middle answering. Do you take calls from Fire 2? Yeah. Or any other first responders? What about non-sworn personnel? Because we're starting to see a big uptick in a lot of civilian forensics, or even the non-sworn, like dispatch, a lot of times.
So in reality, again, it's important that we are, we are not jack of all trades, master of none. So the advertising and the mission remains, because we have active, we have retired law enforcement that have been trained to, obviously the active listening skills aren't the issue. What we don't want is to open up those lines and not be able to staff it properly. That's just not fair to anybody. So certainly if people find us, we're going to take care of them. But as far as putting it out there, we'd be doing a disservice to everyone. Again, that the road to hell is truly paved by good intentions. I looked at doing a 1-800-FIRE line. I mean, and then tried to get people that would be interested, and there is nothing that could be done, and my concentration needed to be, we're not funded. I mean, we still struggle with finances. There's not one funder that's come in that said, hey, particularly now, I love cops. Let me do something that can take care of, their mental health, particularly in an environment right now that is truly insidious.
The big part too is, the cops, and there's a lot of cops who are firefighters as well, and vice versa.
Right.
My SWAT team, I had 4 firefighters on my team. They were medics, but they were also cross-trained as cops. They were, our SWAT medics. And I say this all the time, we're 2 different entities, but we work together. And I'm glad I knew you were going to say that, because I don't know too many people who would pick up the phone at a crisis and go, oh, you're a firefighter? Yeah, go fuck yourself.
Absolutely.
I mean, Chris Fields might do that, but we wouldn't do that.
That sounds like something a firefighter would do.
And to go on to what you said is that, some of our listeners have had the dual careers as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So that they do have that. San Diego their pension system is police and fire. So that when we do stuff and we present to the retirees, they're all in the same group.
Well,
So
I
what
was
you're
saying
saying
it's important too that you get that out, that you do take the calls, because as a firefighter, I hate to admit this publicly, but law enforcement is way ahead of the fire service in treating mental health for their personnel. I was watching a deal to this seminar the other day, and a guy from Cortico, I think, was on there. And I wrote him a question, said, because he'd been around the country, about if he's seen firefighters lagging way behind. And he said, definitely. He said, and I can't say, I can think of one in Florida, and I'm drawing a blank on what it is right now, but it's like as a hotline for just like CopLine. I mean, it's mainly cop. I can't think of one that is a firefighter deal. Most of the conference stuff that I'm fortunate enough to go speak at, some are first responder deal where I catch them fire. 90% of them are law enforcement stuff that they let a firefighter in to speak. But I mean, so it's important, because like I said, and what I see, man, firefighters are the fire service.
I know the IAFF has got a program for PTSD. Now, where's their headquarters? But again, nobody's touched on this greater piece, which is exactly having one phone number for any firefighter to be able to call. And I would be more than happy to give whatever I can to help somebody do that. I just can't do it myself. But the purpose of the funds and what was needed with CopLine.
And like I said, we've all talked about how it starts at the top, you know, with administration people. And I was supposed to speak at a deal a few years ago in Washington about mental health, or law enforcement was going to be there speaking, and the IFF was going to be there. Just well, and I'm hope I don't offend anybody from IFF that's listening, since I'm retired now, but the IFF said we don't need. They wouldn't go speak. They sent no representatives. They said we don't need. We take care of our own. We don't need. And that was just like, when I got the call, they said, "Hey, there's no sense you coming because the IFF's not sending." I thought I was just totally embarrassed. And now we see all the trouble they're having with the IFF. Heads are rolling with money embezzlement and all sorts of stuff going on. So we see where their focus is, and that's got to change. So
I think they put up one in Marlboro. Their IFFs, they opened up a facility in Marlboro. Initially, I think it's Virginia or Maryland.
Maryland.
It's Maryland. It's
Yeah.
Maryland I was thinking of, yes.
And the problem that they had was initially, and I talked to people that went there as clients, was they had a horrible experience. Now, saying that, they had changed and shuffled up a lot of different people. And I think, well, I started not think, but I was getting a lot of more positive responses. But here's my thing, especially when it comes to hotlines. The National Suicide Hotline or the Veterans Crisis Hotline, all these things are in place for that emergency, that acute situation that's going on. What I'm thinking CopLine, I think it differs, is that it doesn't have to get to that point
Right.
before you call.
Exactly right.
Right.
I would not call the suicide hotline if I'm feeling like shit.
Right.
I may be having suicidal ideation, but if I'm just thinking about it, I don't need to call the hotline.
Exactly.
But if it's a generalized, I don't feel good or something's not going right.
Right.
Yeah, here lies where we get the cops that call us because of marriage problems. Same thing they're keying up on. They have some burnout issues. They have some pressures, the them versus us mentality, obviously, that's going on with society right now. And also management, like you said, sometimes management's not supporting them. So we handle all those issues, problems, all the way up to the full-blown crisis. But you're right. The majority of our calls are just someone that needs to just vent. We give them the environment to vent because there's no judgment here and there's complete confidentiality. You can say your name's Babe Ruth. We just want to be there for you, brother, sister, doesn't matter what, or your family members as well. We might get some calls from some family members saying, hey, something just isn't right with so-and-so.
Right.
Well, here's some things we need to look at because we need to help out your loved ones. Right. So you're right. It's the full gamut of issues that we're dealing with.
It's so funny to hear this. I remember sitting home after the shooting for a month and wishing I could have just talked to somebody, just for a minute or two, just to say something. I didn't, and this is the Pulse shooting I'm talking about. And Stephanie, I had no idea about CopLine. I didn't know anything about them. So yeah, we just kind of sat home. Now we did talk to each other and that helped.
Right.
He's stealing his internet connection from his neighbor. So occasionally he gets frozen. It's okay. He lives in the projects.
He's got this Spanish version of,
yes.
He doesn't have Spectrum, he's got L Spectrum. And so they get a little bit over there. Hey, Raul, if you can hear us, you're cut out.
There
you're back now.
Shit. I just had a great speech too, man. I had a great speech and I'm not sure I can repeat it. I was just saying that I was just saying real quick that after Pulse, we sat here for, I sat here for a month of wishing I could have, just wanted to talk to somebody a little more about it. I didn't know anything about CopLine at the time. I had no idea. And so we did get some therapy and that was good, but not, my son, I'm sorry, my son's bringing me dinner. So,
all right.
But I just wish, I'm glad this is here now for guys to use. The resources are unbelievable. Thank you so much for doing what you're doing.
If it's any consolation that you and I were connected back then, because I will tell you, it was after Pulse that you were in the car with me screaming at AT&T to get these fucking lines off of my office phone, that I needed it on a cell phone, just thinking if somehow or another one of you found me. But I will tell you that you and the people that were there were truly the beginning of what lit a fire under my ass that I knew I could no longer do nothing. And like I said, I mean, as you know, 3 weeks later, it was clear this had to launch. And so, although we weren't there for you, you ended up helping so many because, you know, I was looking forward to seeing you. I was looking forward to actually meeting everybody, but because of my connection to somebody that I never knew, I thank you. But that was, you know, what you guys went through not only wasn't in vain, but you have been able to help truly countless people. Last year we had almost 3,000 phone calls. So that is what you guys did for a nation. And I will never forget it. I believe in my founder's story online. I want to say that Pulse is mentioned, and so is the Dallas Five. So
There was a comment from New Jersey saying that it gets the feeling that some first responders are worried about calling anybody because they're afraid the people in the white coats are going to show up if something's going to get back to their respective departments. Right now, more than ever, people are being stifled because of the fear of the wake that happens when getting help.
I'm going to address it, and I'm going to address it, unfortunately, as just taking politics out the window because I'm New Jersey based. The other hotline will send rescue. They do have a reason to fear making that phone call. I would love to tell you that they don't, but when the integrity of those lines were there, and that's what I believed I was doing, it couldn't be done. It's why CopLine became in existence. Anybody in New Jersey, for God's sakes, call CopLine. It is exactly what it was supposed to be. And the other hotline there's a reason the people with white coats do show up. I've had several people who found me in private practice because they called the other hotline. They were hospitalized. Not okay. Not okay. So it's key to spread the word. There is a place that you can call that is confidential, that you do not have to worry about anybody showing up at your door.
All right, so we've been talking a lot about you guys and about the CopLine number. Let me, and forgive me if there's porn on it when I switch over. I'm going to share my screen here.
Again?
And it's dog porn, which is
Yeah.
All right, so, and of course I'm going to share it with the blocking the number. That makes sense. So here's the number. CopLine, it's the officer's lifeline, 1-800-267-5463.
Which spells out the word CopLine. So it's 1-800-CopLine.
Okay, all right. So if Jen is still watching, I'm sure she is, to make sure we don't screw up. We will have that on our resources on the Trauma Behind the Web page. We have that on all of our resources on there. We'll have you on the resources as well as for the people watching, as we have Dr. Dara's information on there as well. So if anybody needs it, it'll at least be on our web page at this if they miss it out. So.
All right, so I'm reading a question from Braden. When they call in, are you guys contacting a therapist or somebody in the area, or reaching out to people like Doug and Chris to assist, get them into a program if they're willing, or do you have them all come in and start therapy if willing? And the other one is, I'm a clinician from, hey Jim, thanks for checking in. I'm a clinician embedded with the Smyrna, Delaware Police Department, actively working to develop officer wellness program. The chief is not in favor of peer programs, but I'm working to change opinions and would like some guidance. Real quickly on some of those things. When I started the peer group or the peer unit, my chief, will remain nameless, Larry Boone, had told me that change occurs from the bottom up. And I said, that's a fucking coup. I need the captain of the ship to drive the ship. Yeah. When you need to park, that we use everybody, we'll go on the port and we'll be manning the deck and stuff. But I can do all the stuff I want to. If the upper echelon hasn't bought in, And if they're not buying in by now, I mean, I don't know. Back in the day, you could get away with being like, ignorance is kind of bliss. We didn't know this kind of stuff was available. This is all over the place. IACP, IFC, all the big time movers of these organizations or the discipline are saying, we have a problem. Now what do we do? So it's important that you exist, and it's important for folks like you, or for anybody listening or watching, to spread. This is a resource.
Mhm.
This is something that you can utilize. But when they call you, obviously you're not going to be intrusive. You're not going to send people over there or anything like that. But what kind of services would you offer somebody? And for an example, because I don't want to use anybody else's example, and Doug's a really good example of it myself. If I called you and said, listen, I had my gun in my mouth last night. I'm struggling. I don't know what the fuck to do. What are some of the options that you would want to give me? Because I want to give people an understanding of how this works, other than just, theoretically you call with problem, you answer problem. What specifically do you guys do? If I were to call in with that.
Yeah, right. As soon as the officer would call us, and after they vet us, because everybody's vetting in law enforcement, we vet each other all the time. So once they trust us retired cops on the line, and remember, they had the courage to call us in the first place. So we talk for a few minutes back and forth. And yeah, if they have that gun on their lap or in their hand, whatever the case may be, we want to break it down and start talking to them about what's going on in their lives. So, brother, can you do me a favor? Can you please put the gun down for a second? Because you're telling me something. And what do you really mean by that? So we start doing the active listening, which is all that we need to do here. We need to listen to what they're having, what's going on in their lives. Check out their support system. If they do have a support system, they may not. So we're going to talk about a lot of stuff on that line, whether it's 2 minutes or 2 hours, but that officer's not going to be alone. If during our conversation, that officer starts realizing there's some things I haven't thought about. You mentioned some things here that maybe I missed, and they're willing to get some support. CopLine is going to eventually give them a referral, because now they're open to thinking outside the box. And like, you're right, this is the shit show that I'm in right now, but we've talked about A, B, and C, and now I actually feel a little bit better. But you mentioned something that keyed up to me, and that was mental health professional support. Because like, if we break our legs, we're gonna go to a doctor. I'm a retired cop. I'm not a therapist or a counselor. I'm gonna stay in my lane, brother. So when we talk to these officers, they realize, like, you know what, you're right. I do need some help. And when they make that decision themselves and realize, holy shit, I'm off the edge right now because of this retired cop on CopLine that just helped me out. But I don't want to be back here, so I do need some support. Then we start looking at our robust referral webpage that we have, and that's where Steph and some other licensed folks on CopLine do a significant job in vetting our folks to make sure they're culturally competent. When we give out a therapist or a counselor, they better be damn sure they know how to treat an officer and all these semantics that officers are involved in, everything that goes with the law enforcement community. And once we give that referral to this officer, it's up to him or her to have the same courage that they had to call me and make one more phone call, just one more phone call, because now you just told me verbally, you realize you need some mental health professional, whether it's inpatient, outpatient, whatever the case may be. And then they have the resources available to them. If they want to call back, now this is the only time we call folks back, because CopLine is completely confidential. But if they're telling me, hey, Jim, thank you, brother, for doing this, this, and that, and now I have the referrals, but can you do me a favor? Can someone from CopLine call me tomorrow at 12 o'clock to make sure I'm okay? We will do that. And if they want to make sure that they follow through with the referrals, they're probably going to call us back and say, you know what, I did follow through, I'm getting help, thank you very much, and then they're going to move on with whatever that treatment's going to be.
Real quick, along those lines, a lot of times, and I know when I've talked to somebody, I know, same with Doug and Chris and Brill and the doc, sometimes there's a relationship built, albeit over the phone. Do you get any requests like, hey, listen, Jim, thank you, I got to go, but can I call you directly, or can I call and request you? Do you get those coming in?
Oh, yeah.
We do, Chris. We get that frequently. But at CopLine, we're all trained the same. We all go through the same training, and we have to tell them that we're all working 12-hour shifts. And you call back in 6 hours, and maybe another retired cop who's willing and able and ready to take your call. So by all means, we did connect. And I'm not going to tell you my next shift because we don't know what our next shift's going to be because we fill a schedule every day. And then that caller has to be comfortable to call again, and they will. They do.
The other thing is, it's really nice to be able to say to somebody, I'm so glad that you had such a great experience with me, and that we are all trained, that it makes me believe that when you call back, you'll have another really positive experience. Yeah. Because what you want them to do is you want them to connect to the line, not to an individual. And that is hard. I mean, we had a wonderful, a retiree who answered the lines of an individual in crisis. And when you're talking about programs, and you're talking about, what it cost, to get you there and kind of what they did. Well, I'll give you another incredible example is so that this individual needed an inpatient facility. He had been terminated from his job, and he was suicidal. He called CopLine and allowed volunteers to call him, and we were looking for a facility. I will tell you, and if I'm allowed to share their information, I will, that this facility ended up not only taking him, ended up paying for his way to get there and put him through the entire program for not a dime. He has no insurance. And he ended up, he had always cooked. That's like what he loved to do. So he would actually help there. Well, they ended up, because he had no job, he had nothing to go back to, he ended up getting a job working with them, with these guys, so that he's doing what he loves to do in an incredible facility. And he ended up writing these 2 poems that were just so moving. And one of them was titled A Broken Man. And the other one was titled, I think, something about like the peace I found. It was just, when you talk about doing the right thing for the right reason, and our volunteer, because he was in the same state that he was in, our volunteer wanted to meet up with him. And it was so difficult for me to say, you can't, like, you just can't.
So there's a question that came in from a first responder in New Jersey. Since you guys are New Jersey based, what are some of the best resources for New Jersey based first responders?
Resources as far as individual therapists, as far as inpatient, as far as what?
Oh, that's just what he answered. Hey, Rob, what specific resources are you looking for? Substance abuse? Are you looking for health?
Yeah.
Right.
You got to give him a while. I know the guy that asked the question.
So one of the things, so if he ends up calling CopLine and he wants a therapist, one of the things, anytime I do podcasts or whatever, I'm not on a referral list for CopLine. It is unethical for me to ever be referred to from CopLine. CopLine was never to make money for me. So the answer is there are other therapists, but I just need to make sure that that's what he's looking for. They're culturally competent that work out of New Jersey. You're just not going to end up being able to see me, which is appropriate. But we've got that. We've got inpatient referrals. We've got AA, peace officers, AA meetings that are local. And that's been a gift since COVID. If you want to know what's come out of that, that's awesome, is I've got guys that are doing Zoom meetings in Australia right now. That is just, awesome.
So they have.
I'd be scared to call somebody in New Jersey because I'd be afraid they'd pick up the phone and be like, "Go fuck yourself." That's what everybody said to me when I was in New Jersey.
So there was another question. They wanted to know, do you have a Facebook page that we can share via social media to help get the word around about all of you guys?
Absolutely. CopLine's on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. And I guess the more likes, I passed that curve age-wise. But all I know is I'm supposed to be on social media, and my kids are not. So, but we are on social media. But you're supposed to like us, tweet us, I don't know, share us, whatever you're supposed to do. But we have ended up getting a great following, and it's a great way of being able to get the word out.
And we'll send Doug the email with all those social media links so you guys can post it up.
Yeah,
We'll
well,
put it on our website and
I'm good with clicking and sharing. Now, listen, I tell everybody, and I think I've told you this, Jim, if you get an email or a text from me with more than 5 words, Karen wrote it.
you set up people.
Dara's laughing. I'm like, hey, bro, you doing the show tonight? That's the longest thing I've written in a while. I'm more of a pick up the phone call person, but I wanted to tell you guys, thank you for your integrity. It means, and everybody on this team here, and we're missing a few guys tonight because we're working, but we are big on integrity. We are big on who we work for. Obviously, it obviously is not about the money here, and I know it. And same for Doc, man. Like when I met him and I've seen him in action, to have somebody who doesn't ask for insurance, doesn't ask for this, just goes, yeah, man, put him on the phone, let me talk to him. He's amazing. And before, I know we're running out of time, Chris, but Doc, I wanted you to chime in and kind of some of the things we're talking about. Can you give us the clinical side of it or your thoughts about anything anybody said? I'm just making you talk.
No.
Because you got to be comfortable.
Nice to see Stephanie and Jim, because I've referred people to CopLine before, and I wanted to, it's nice to put a face to a name and make sure who's behind that sign. So thank you for doing the work that you guys are doing. It's really meaningful work. And it's nice and it's reassuring to know that we could refer people to you guys and they'll be taken care of well, and what mission you stand behind is really important. For the folks that are in an active state of suicidality, I'm sure that you guys have had your fair share of those too, and you guys know what to do and how to help help people who are severely in crisis. We're not going to see a shortage of this stuff. It's not going to ease up miraculously, unfortunately. And what you said tonight, speaks to Chris Fields and myself too, is we have to really start looking at fire as well and EMS to see what the equivalent version of this would be. But I do support where you're coming from though, Stephanie, and you have to stay focused, on what your mission is. But there's a lot of room for us to try to be able to offer support to other personnel as well. And but keep doing what you're doing. Thank you. You guys are great.
Thanks, Doc. We did have a question. One of the folks in Delaware that was just talking said that they have CopLine vetted therapists agreeing to see officers in Delaware, and he said that the contact was easy to make. He also says, I saw on CopLine's website you're looking for mental health professionals to volunteer. What does that entail?
That's
So
from Leslie, Chris.
Yeah.
So they fill out a questionnaire. So it's twofold. Number one, we need to continue to build our referral list. So it is really to get on a list so that they can then start seeing people from Delaware or what have you. And then we do the vetting on that. The other is whether or not a clinician who is truly culturally competent, God forbid, should ever want to take a shift and get me off of the lines 24/7. And again, it's to support our listeners. As I always say, I'm not the cop shrink of the entire country in Canada. It is not that you have somebody on call and great, here you go, Steph will wake up and be able to talk. It is really for my retired guys. So if a clinician is interested, it is backing up our officers. Kind of the question that you had to begin with is who takes care of them. It's us. It's people like myself that will then take the shifts, and then we send out notification of who to contact. Okay,
so Stephanie, I could hear the passion and sincerity through this platform. It was extremely powerful. Thank you. Jen's going to be posting it, the CopLine Facebook page and webpage, on our Facebook page. So definitely link it over there. I got to tell you, thank you so much for being on. What I like to do before we wrap everything up, I have a little spiel at the end, but I want to go around for any last words. So we'll start with Doc.
No, it's always fun to be part of this program because we always meet new people and have really great conversations. It seems like the audience was really engaged on this one too. So obviously you guys hit a proper nerve, to reach out to everybody. So thank you, and I'll see you guys again, I'm sure.
Thanks, Doc. Raul.
Really quick again, Doug kind of mentioned the integrity. Stephanie and Jim, thank you so much for what you're doing and being and having that kind of integrity. There's a couple guys that are on here right now, Jason being one of them. I won't tell the story, but he almost jumped.
Oh, man.
Motherfucker. You upgrade your shit. Oh, it's always the Puerto Rican kid with his jacked up bootleg computer. So with that, thank you, Raul.
Froze again. Am I froze? Freeze again, son of a.
Again, it was like the to be continued episode.
Shit. My damn minute. And right when I'm saying some good shit too, man. Golly.
You need to teach your son how to do sign language
Oh my
instead of giving you dinner.
Oh my God.
I
Well,
was just thanking you for your integrity really quick and just saying that there's a guy named Jason that's on the program watching today. Without telling his whole story, he almost jumped off a bridge, and the whole time wishing he had somebody he could talk to, just any kind of outlet. Thank you for what you're doing. Thanks for the way you're doing it, more importantly. So thanks.
awesome. Chris.
No, first, thanks to Stephanie and James for coming on, man. Awesome. I agree with whoever posted that, but you can hear the passion in her voice when she talks about it. And like I said, like Dr. Dar said, seeing the fire service lagging behind is why I'm involved with, Healthy Hire, Healthy Retire, Survive First, and everybody. And since I took a shot at them, I'll also say that the IFF Center of Excellence, they have made leaps and bounds improvements. And like you mentioned, you've heard people say they've gotten better with their insurance, where everything works. So they're making the effort. The effort's there. They just need to get things rolling. I think they're like everybody else when they first started out. Maybe they got too big too quick, but they're doing well, and at least there's an avenue for people. So
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris. Dougie.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with everybody else. Thank you guys for coming on. I'll tell you, all of us here on this team are honored to have you collaborate with us. We're all big fans of collaborating with and bringing, times are evolving. All you got to do is pick up your phone and put on social media or put on the news. Unfortunately, in this industry, the trauma's evolving. Things are really bad, and there's a big need to take care of each other. And I always say, if we don't do it, nobody else is going to do it, right? I mean, we've got it in this industry. And we're big fans of collaborating because we just feel, it's the typical, SWAT mentality. Oh, you got 20 guys want to fight? Well, we're bringing 30. And so what we're thinking is like, hey, man, we want to, none of us care individually about our state. We unite with a powerful front, and we want to have all the resources, but we also want to have all the right people with the right integrity behind it. And so once again, we're glad to have you guys on. We've had some great guests on tonight that do some pretty cool things. We even had Iva on from Arizona, which is Dara's buddy. They do some amazing stuff out there. So super glad to have you. Obviously, we'll have you. Jen's putting you on all the web pages, so we'll stay in contact. You're welcome to come back to this show anytime you want. Anytime you guys got something going on and you need to get that voice out there to do it, we'd be more than happy to. And be glad to have you as a resource on there with the rest of us. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Doug. Yeah, I can't express it enough. CopLine, thanks for being on, Steph and Jim. Again, that number is going to be 1-800-267-5463. I want to thank everybody for coming out and listening. I want to thank our sponsors real quick. Chateau Recovery, which is a residential facility and preferred provider for the National FOP. Just got that a few months back. Stepstone Connect, which is an online intensive outpatient and individual counseling service for first responders and veterans. And stay tuned and register for next week's show. We're going to have the folks at Warriors Rest Foundation. And if you didn't get enough and you want to continue the conversation, go ahead and go to info Facebook group and reach out at at traumabehindthebadge.com. And as I always say, if you or somebody is struggling and you don't know who to call or where to go, give us a shout. Definitely give CopLine a shout. But it's been awesome having you guys listen to all of us. So thanks again, CopLine, and we hope you join us again soon.
Thank you.
Guys, have a good night, everybody, and join us on Facebook if you have any more questions.
Thank you.
See you guys.